Nell Whitaker was on her knees in the freezing mud outside the store, scooping spilled flour back into a split sack with her bare hands, when Marjorie Fell's voice cut clean down the length of Main Street. "Leave it. A woman like you has no business touching anything that belongs to decent people." Nell froze. Every eye in Granite Falls turned toward her, and then a stranger's boots stopped in the mud beside the ruined sack. A big man in a heavy fur coat went down on one knee beside her, looked her straight in the eye, and said the words that would take her whole life apart and build it again. "Ma'am, I don't know what you did to deserve an apology, but you're getting one from me anyway." Nobody in Granite Falls had ever once defended Nell Whitaker, not in 8 years. Let me take you back to how a woman came to believe she was nothing, and to the winter that finally taught her otherwise. The sack had split the moment it hit the ground. White dust rose in the cold October air and settled over her hands, her sleeves, the hem of the only good dress she owned. She did not cry out. She did not ask for help. She knelt in the mud and scooped the ruined flour back into the burlap, because if she didn't, Dunmore would dock her wages, and she could not afford that. She could not afford anything. And then she saw it, half sunk in the churned mud, dull silver, small as a thumbnail. Her mother's thimble. It had come loose from her apron pocket when she fell. Nell lunged for it with a sound she did not mean to make, a small, terrible sound, because that thimble was the only thing she owned in this world that had ever belonged to somebody who loved her. It was worth perhaps a nickel. She had gone hungry 3 separate winters with it in her pocket and never once considered selling it. "Leave it," Marjorie Fell said again. The banker's wife stood on the walk in a green traveling coat, her gloved hands folded, her mouth already curling with the satisfaction of a woman who enjoyed being right about people. A crowd gathered the way crowds do when someone is being shamed. Politely, nobody looking right at her. Everybody watching all the same. "I was only trying to help, Mrs. Fell," Nell said, and her voice came out smaller than she wanted it to. "Help," Marjorie repeated the word like it tasted wrong. "Is that what you call it? I've heard you call scouring floors honest work too. I suppose a person with no name and no family has to call everything something better than what it is." She let that sit. "Get up. You're embarrassing yourself." Nell rose slowly, flour dust falling from her skirt like snow that had no business falling in October, her fist closed around a thimble she had not been able to find. "I'll pay for the sack." "With what?" Marjorie's eyebrows lifted. "Everyone in this town knows you barely earn enough at that laundry to keep yourself fed. You take up space that decent, God-fearing families could use." She smiled the way a cat smiles at a thing it has already decided to toy with. "Tell me, Nell, in all your 24 years, has anyone, even once, been glad that you existed?" The street went silent, and something cracked open in Nell Whitaker's chest, an old wound in a place that had never healed right. She thought of her mother's hands. She thought of the fever that took both her parents inside of 4 days when she was 16. She thought of every boarding house, every temporary job, every kind word that had turned out to be a lie designed to get something from her. She thought of Horace Dunmore's voice 3 years back, the first time she asked him for work. "Women like you should be grateful for whatever kindness they receive." She had believed him. She had spent 8 years believing him. "I asked you a question," Marjorie pressed. That was the exact moment the stranger's boots stopped in the mud beside the ruined sack. Nell had not noticed him arrive. Nobody had, which was strange, because he was not a small man. He was tall and broad through the shoulders, and he wore the high country on him, a heavy coat of dark fur over hide and wool. Hair long and dark past his collar, a thick dark beard over a jaw cut out of the mountain behind the town. He looked like something the timberland had made, and only leant to the street for an hour. He knelt down in the mud without a word, gathered the split sack in two hands as though it were worth something, and looked up not at Marjorie, but at Nell. "Ma'am, I don't know what you did to deserve an apology, but you're getting one from me anyway. Should have watched where I was walking." Nell stared at him. "You didn't do anything, sir, I'm aware." Then he put his hand flat in the mud, felt about, and came up with something between two enormous fingers. He wiped it clean on his sleeve, and Nell saw the dull gleam of silver and felt her heart stop. He did not hand it to her. He turned her hand palm up, gently, and set the thimble in it, and folded her fingers closed over it. "That looked like it mattered," he said. Nell could not speak. The man stood, flour dust on his knees, and turned to face Marjorie with an expression that was polite in exactly the way a closed door is polite. "Ma'am, I don't believe we've met. Elias Coulter. I run the Coulter Valley, 11 miles west." Marjorie's whole posture changed. Everyone in the territory knew the name Coulter. "Mr. Coulter, we've heard a great deal about you. I didn't realize you were in town." "I am." His eyes had not left Nell. "And I couldn't help but overhear you asking this woman a question. I'd like to answer it, if you don't mind. Has anyone ever been glad she existed?" He repeated it slowly, like a man turning something over and finding it uglier each time he saw a new side of it. "Yes, ma'am. I am. Right now. Standing here glad to see a person willing to kneel in the mud and clean up a mess instead of walking past it like every other soul on this street just did." Nobody spoke. He reached into his coat and set $2 silver into Horace Dunmore's hand, who had appeared in the doorway sometime during all this without anyone noticing. "That covers the flour. Anything else the lady needs today, put it on my account." "Sir, I can't accept. You're not accepting charity." He said it gently, but there was iron under it. "You're accepting an apology on behalf of a town that owes you a great many of them." Marjorie's mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. Then she gathered her skirts, muttered something about being late, and went off down the walk with her heels striking the wood like small gunshots. The crowd drifted off the way crowds do when the show stops being fun. Nell stood alone with a stranger, flour on her hands and a thimble closed in her fist. "You didn't need to do that." "I know. Then why did you?" Elias Coulter considered the question like it deserved considering. "Because I've spent 6 years watching men build fences to keep other folks' cattle off their land," he said. "And I've never once seen a man build a fence to keep cruelty off a person. Seemed like somebody ought to start." Nell did not know what to say to that. Nobody had ever spoken to her like her dignity was something worth defending rather than something she had to earn back one apology at a time. "I should get back to the laundry," she managed. "Mrs. Hobbs will dock my pay." "Of course." He stepped back, and something about the gesture struck her, the way he made space instead of closing it. "Might I ask your name?" Nell Miss Whitaker." He touched the brim of his hat. "I hope our paths cross again." She walked away without answering. She did not trust her voice. And some old, tired part of her was already waiting for this kindness to show its teeth. She was wrong. But weeks would pass before she knew it. The laundry smelled the way it always smelled: lye soap and steam, and the particular exhaustion of other people's dirt. Mrs. Hobbs ran the place with a ledger in one hand and doubt in the other. "You're 11 minutes late. There was an incident on Main Street." "There's always an incident with you." "I don't pay you to have incidents. I pay you to wash linens." "Yes, ma'am." Nell went to the tubs and plunged her hands into water hot enough to redden the skin, and thought about a stranger kneeling in the mud as though her shame was something worth interrupting. Glad to see a person willing to kneel in the mud. She turned the words over and over, hunting for the trick hidden inside them. because kindness without a trick was not a thing Nell had encountered in 8 years of trying. "You're scouring that shirt hard enough to wear a hole through it," said Nan Colby, the only other washerwoman under 30, watching her with the bright curiosity of someone who had heard a rumor and wanted it confirmed. "I heard Elias Coulter gave Marjorie a talking to on Main Street this morning. I heard he called you a lady in front of half the town. It wasn't like that. Nell, do you have any idea who that man is? Wealthiest outfit in 3 counties. Runs cattle and triplines both. Unmarried, half the mothers in this town have been putting their daughters in front of him for 2 years, and he's never so much as tipped his hat. He was being decent. That's all. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe not to you." Nell scrubbed harder. She did not want to hope. Hope was expensive, and she had spent everything she had on it years ago, before she learned that hope was only disappointment that hadn't happened yet. 4 days later, he was standing by a wagon outside the general store with his hat in his hands, as though he had taken it off specifically for this. "Miss Whitaker." "Mr. Coulter, I've been in town settling accounts. Thought I'd ask you something before I rode back." He hesitated, which surprised her. He had not seemed like a man who hesitated. "I need help at the valley. My housekeeper, Orla Beck, is getting on and can't manage the whole house alone. I'm looking to hire someone reliable, strong back, honest disposition." Nell's stomach tightened. "You're offering me work." "I am." "Why me?" "Because I watched you kneel in the mud and clean up a mess that wasn't your fault in front of a woman who was insulting you without one word of complaint." His voice was steady. "That told me more about your character than any letter of reference could. Mr. Coulter, I appreciate it. But I don't know you. I don't know your house or what would be expected of me there." "That's fair." He nodded. "Ride out and see it. Talk to Orla. If it isn't right, you ride back. No obligation, and I won't ask again." Nell studied his face, searching the way she always searched, for the crack where the trick was hiding. She did not find one. That unsettled her more than finding one would have. "I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking." She did not sleep. Nan found her at the tubs before dawn. "You'll go?" "I don't know. You do." "Men don't give things away, Nan, not to me." "What happened at 17? Nell wrung out a shirt, a shopkeeper's son. "He smiled at me 2 weeks. Then he told me what the smiling was for. And at 20, a family in Cheyenne. Hired me as a companion. Kept me like a chair." Nan said nothing. "Do you know what he said to me?" Nell's hands went still. "Dunmore, 8 years ago. He said women like me should be grateful for whatever kindness we receive. And you believed him. I still do. Some nights I feel it in my bones, like a break that healed wrong." "Then why are your hands shaking?" Nell looked down at them. Because a man had knelt in freezing mud and closed her fingers over a thimble worth a nickel like it was worth more than every coin in his coat. Because nobody was watching that part, and he did it anyway. "Go," Nan said. "And if I'm wrong, then you'll be wrong in a warm house, instead of right in a cold one." By morning she had made up her mind. Not because she trusted him. She didn't, but because staying here scouring linens until her hands bled, believing Marjorie was the nearest thing to truth she would ever get, had stopped being a life she could bear. The ride out took the better part of 2 hours, and the country climbed and roughened the whole way, and when the valley finally opened below her, Nell forgot to breathe. It sat cupped between white peaks, a creek running black and quick down the middle of it, cattle scattered on the frost, timber climbing the ridges. And at the heart of it, a long, low house of good timber, with smoke standing straight from the chimney. A woman was already on the porch, with her arms crossed. "You'll be Nell." "Yes, ma'am." "Orla Beck. I've kept this house 11 years, and I'll tell you plainly, I never asked Mr. Coulter to hire help." "I understand. I don't want to take anything from you. Orla studied her the way older women study younger ones when they are deciding whether to trust their instincts. Well, you've got calluses on your hands, and you look me in the eye when you talk. That's more than I can say for the last 3 girls he tried. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Both the others thought working here meant marrying into this valley inside a year. Started acting like the lady of the house before they'd swept a single floor. He sent them packing. You don't strike me as the type. No, ma'am. I just need honest work. Good, come in. Let's see if you can actually clean, or if you only talk like it. Elias found her an hour later on her knees scouring the kitchen floor, sleeves rolled to the elbow, hair coming loose from its pins. Orla says you work harder than the last 3 combined. Nell looked up, startled. I didn't hear you come in. I have a habit of that. He leaned in the door frame. Does that mean you're staying? I haven't decided. Fair enough. Take your time. The floor's not going anywhere. He did not leave. He stood there a moment longer, watching her work with an expression she could not read, and then said quietly, Miss Whitaker, I want to be plain about one thing so there's no confusion between us. Nell's hands went still. Here it was. She thought, the trick, finally showing itself. I'm not offering you this position because I expect anything beyond honest work. I've seen how this town treats women with no family to stand behind them, and I don't care for it. That's the whole of my reasoning. Why does it matter to you? It came out sharper than she meant. Why does a rich man care what happens to a woman nobody else in this county gives a second thought to? Something moved in his face. A flicker of old grief, there and gone so fast she nearly missed it. Because 6 years ago I watched this town be cruel to somebody I loved, he said quietly, and I stood by and let it happen, because I was too proud or too afraid to speak. I've rued it every day since. I don't intend to make that mistake twice. There was a whole story buried in that, and he plainly was not ready to tell it, and something in her, some instinct she had not trusted in years, told her not to push. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's mine to carry. He straightened, and the moment closed as fast as it had opened. The position's yours if you want it. Room, board, fair wages. Nell looked around the kitchen, the good stove, the solid table, clean light coming through real glass. And she thought of the water stains above the laundry and Mrs. Hobbs's endless doubt. I'll stay, she said. On trial. 1 month. 1 month, Elias agreed, and if at the end of it you want to go, I'll drive you back myself. No hard feelings. He put out his hand, and she shook it, and told herself firmly that this was an arrangement of labor for wages and nothing more. Nothing that deserved the strange warmth spreading through her chest. She was already lying to herself. She simply did not know it yet. The first 2 weeks ran to a rhythm Nell had never known. Work that was hard but not cruel. A house that ran on routine instead of fear. And a man who thanked her. Thank you for the coffee, Miss Whitaker. It's only coffee. It's hot, and it's here. That's 2 things it wasn't last month. Another morning, thank you for the shirt. It took 4 minutes. It took 4 minutes and 11 years of somebody teaching you how. And once, after she sat up all night with a sick mare, that wasn't your work. No, I won't forget it. Small things. Ordinary things. Each one landing like water on dry ground. She noticed things about him too. He asked her opinion and then waited for the answer. He ate with the hands, not apart from them. He spoke to Orla exactly as he spoke to the bank manager in town. He was quiet, but never cold. Quiet the way a man is when he has learned that most things worth saying do not need saying loudly. Orla took 3 weeks to thaw, and thawed all at once. It happened over a ledger. Nell had found the household accounts in a drawer, kept in a hand that shook, columns that did not agree with themselves. And she had sat down and quietly put 6 months of them right, without mentioning it to anybody. Orla found her at it and stood in the doorway a long moment. "My eyes have been going 2 years," the old woman said at last. It cost her something to say. "I never told him. I know. I could see it in the sevens." Nell did not look up. They lean when a person's guessing. Orla sat down heavily across from her. "If you tell him, he'll pension me off. He'll be kind about it, which is worse." Mrs. Beck, Nell set down the pen. "I have spent 8 years being 1 bad week away from the road. I am not going to take a woman's place from her." She pushed the ledger over. "You'll tell me the figures and I'll write them. That's all. And if anybody asks, the books were always fine." Orla looked at that ledger for a very long time. "There was a girl came through here 2 years back," she said finally. "Pretty, called me dear, and asked me twice a day when I meant to retire. She got up and went to the stove, and her back was to Nell when she spoke again. 'You'll be wanting the good flour for tomorrow. It's behind the salt. I never show anybody where the good flour is.' It was the nearest thing to a blessing she had been given in 8 years, and she had to turn to the window before she could answer. He took her out to see the north pasture on a bright hard morning in the 4th week, because she asked, and because he had begun to notice that she asked about the land the way a person asks about a family. They rode 2 hours up through the timber and came out on a shoulder of the mountain with the whole valley laid out below them. White and black and enormous, the creek a dark thread, and the cattle like scattered stones. "There," Elias said, and pointed with his chin. 1,100 acres, from the creek to the burnt ridge. It's beautiful. It's grass." But he said it the way another man might have said, "It's my mother. My father walked this ground in 68 with a wagon and a wife and no money at all. He put the first stake in about where that rock is. He was 31 years old, and he'd nothing behind him and nothing owed to him." Nell sat her horse and looked out at it. "He'd have liked you," Elias said. "He'd have liked my scouring. He'd have liked that you don't flinch." Elias turned in the saddle to look at her directly. "I've watched a lot of people meet this country, Nell. Most of them want to be told it's beautiful and then want to go back indoors. You look at it like you're pricing what it cost you. That's what looking is, where I come from." "I know," he said. "That's what I mean." They rode back down in a silence that had stopped being uncomfortable somewhere around the 2nd week, and Nell did not say, could not have said that she had spent the whole ride trying not to want a thing she had no business wanting. One morning over coffee before sunrise, she found the courage. "Mr. Coulter, may I ask you something personal?" "You may ask. I can't promise I'll answer. You said once you rued staying silent while this town was cruel to someone you loved." She wrapped both hands around her cup. "I wondered, is that why you never married?" He was quiet long enough that she rued asking. "Her name was Cecily," he said finally. "We were to be married 6 years back. Her family didn't approve. A trapper and a cattleman wasn't good enough for a judge's daughter. When her father learned we meant to marry regardless, he sent her east to relatives. I never saw her again, never got the chance to fight for her the way I should have. I'm so sorry, Elias. It was the first time she had used his given name." He noticed. She saw him notice, and saw something soften. "I built fences after that," he said, "around the valley, around myself. Told myself it was easier to be alone than to lose somebody else." He looked at her then, steady and unflinching. "I've been reconsidering that lately." Nell's heart stumbled. "Have you?" "I have." Neither said anything more. But something had shifted between them, quiet and undeniable, like a door locked for 6 years easing open on its hinges. He asked about the thimble on a Sunday evening, watching her mend by the fire. You keep taking it out of your pocket." Nell's hands stilled. She had not known that anybody had noticed. She had not known there was anybody left in the world who looked at her closely enough to notice a thing like that. It was my mother's. She turned it over once in her fingers. She was a seamstress in Missouri before the fever. It's silver, but it's thin as paper, worth about a nickel, if that. She put it back in her pocket. I've been hungry with it 3 winters. I never came close to selling it. Why not? Because it's the only proof I've got, Nell said, that somebody once thought I was worth having. Elias did not say anything for a while. When she looked up, his jaw was tight and he was staring into the fire. "You keep saying that," he said. "Some version of it. Every few days." He turned to look at her. "That, you have to prove it. That there ought to be evidence. There ought to be. People want evidence." "Nell," he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "A thing doesn't get its worth from what somebody will pay for it. That thimble's worth a nickel to a man in a shop, and it's worth everything you own to you, and both of those are true at the same time. And only one of them is about the thimble." His voice went quiet. "You've been letting this town price you for 8 years. They aren't the buyer. They never were." Nell sat with her mending in her lap and could not answer him at all. The trouble began the way trouble in small towns always begins, with a whisper that traveled faster than truth. It was Nan who brought it, riding out under the pretense of delivering mended linens. "They're talking about you in town. About you and Mr. Coulter." Her eyes were bright with the thrill of bad news. "Marjorie's been telling anyone who'll listen that you've bewitched him. That a woman with no name and no money has no business getting ideas above her station. She says men like Elias don't marry women like you. They use them and move on." The words landed exactly where Marjorie had aimed them all those weeks ago. Right in the old wound. That evening Elias found her on the porch steps, watching the sun go down over land that would never be hers no matter how long she stayed. "You've been quiet all evening. I'm tired." "Nell," he said her name gently, but with enough weight that she knew he would not let the lie stand. She told him. All of it. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet a long moment. "Do you believe them?" "I don't know what I believe anymore." "I do." He turned to face her fully. "I believe a person's worth was never something this town had the right to decide. I believe you've done more honest work in 3 weeks than half this territory does in a year. And I believe—" He stopped himself. "You believe what?" "I believe I've spent 6 years building fences to keep myself safe from ever loving anybody again," he said quietly. "And I believe you walked straight through every one of them without even trying." Nell's breath caught in her throat, and before she could find one word to answer him, hoofbeats came up the road, fast, urgent. The particular rhythm of a rider bringing news that would not wait for morning. Elias was on his feet at once, every soft edge in him hardening back into the man who ran 11 miles of hard country. The rider was one of his own hands, a young man named Rye, and he pulled his horse up hard enough that it nearly reared. "Mr. Coulter, you need to see this." "What is it?" Rye pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Land agent came by the east boundary this afternoon. Man named Marcus Bly. Says he's got documents proving your daddy never held clear title to the north pasture. The whole 1,100 acres. Says the county's set to reopen the claim inside 30 days. Elias went very still. "That's impossible. My father homesteaded that ground in 68. I've got the deed in my study right now. That's what I told him, sir. He just smiled and said deeds can be wrong. Said there's a name on an older claim. Somebody filed on that land before your daddy ever did." Elias unfolded the notice, and Nell watched his face change. Confusion first, then something darker. Something that looked almost like fear beneath the anger. "It's a notice," he said slowly, informing me that in 30 days a judge in Cheyenne will decide whether this valley, this house, the ground you're standing on, belongs to my family at all. The rock came through the kitchen window 4 nights later. Nell was at the table with a lamp and a stack of Elias's ledgers, working through columns of figures because she had discovered she was good at it, and because Orla had said, with enormous reluctance, that the books had been a shambles since old Amos Coulter died. The glass went in with a sound like a gunshot. She was on the floor before she had decided to move, glass in her hair. The lamp guttering. Elias came through the door at a dead run, with a rifle. "Nell, I'm not cut. I'm not cut." He hauled her up off the boards with one arm and put himself between her and the broken window without seeming to notice he had done it, and stood there in the dark listening to the yard, and the yard gave back nothing but wind. The rock was on the floor by the stove. There was paper tied round it with twine. Elias read it by lamplight, and Nell watched his face go to stone. "What does it say?" He did not answer. "Elias, it has my name in it, doesn't it?" She held out her hand. "Give it to me." He gave it to her. "Send the laundry girl back where she come from, and the north pasture question might yet be settled quiet. Keep her, and it won't be." Nell read it twice. Then she set it down on the table very carefully, and found that her hands were steady, and was surprised. "They think I'm the soft place," she said. "Nell, no, listen to me." She looked up at him. "A man who wants your land throws a rock at the thing he thinks will make you flinch. He didn't threaten your cattle. He didn't threaten your house. He threatened me, which means somebody has watched this valley long enough to work out what you'd hate most to lose." Her voice did not shake, and she noticed that it did not, and something in her chest went fiercely proud. "That's not a threat, Elias. That's a confession. They're afraid. Frightened men rush, and men who rush leave paper behind them." Elias stood in his ruined kitchen with a rifle in one hand and looked at her. "You should be terrified," he said. "I've been terrified for 8 years, Nell said. "It's the first thing in my life that's ever been useful." Orla swept up the glass and said nothing at all, and that night, without a word to anybody, she carried her own bedding down from her room over the pantry and made herself a place on the kitchen settle, where a person could see both doors. The deed was in a tin box in the study, and it was clean. Homestead certificate, issued 1868 to Amos Coulter, witnessed and recorded at the county office. No irregularity, nothing. Nell leaned over the desk studying it with more attention than Elias seemed to expect. "You read documents like you know what you're looking at." "I worked for a family in Cheyenne once, before I came back here. The husband was a circuit judge. I helped his clerk file paperwork for 2 years. Deeds, wills, land claims." She traced the seal with a fingertip. "I know what these are supposed to look like. And I know how they get falsified." Elias stared at her. "You never said." "Nobody ever asked," Nell said. "A woman who scrubs floors isn't generally assumed to have read a land ledger." Something in his face changed. Not surprise, exactly. Something closer to fury on her behalf. "Then let's go and read one," he said. They rode to Cheyenne, and in the record office, with a nervous clerk named Hollis hovering at her elbow, Nell turned to the section of the deed book that should have held the original 1868 filing, and found a page cut out of it. Not torn. Cut, A-blade, close to the spine, patient work. "When did this happen?" she asked Hollis. The clerk's face had gone the color of paper. "I don't. The books are old, ma'am. Sometimes they, Mr. Hollis," Nell's voice went quiet. "Ledger pages don't cut themselves square." He fled to a back room and did not come out again. The lawyer's name was Thomas Wexler, and his office above the store was crowded with the smell of ink and worry. A cut page proves tampering. he said, reading the notice for the third time. "It doesn't prove who did it, and it doesn't beat a forged claim on its own. We need the archive. The archive. Every claim filing in this district gets a duplicate sent to the county land office in Laramie. If they doctored the county copy, they'd have needed to reach the Laramie copy too, or the discrepancy is plain." He looked up. Somebody would have to ride there, request it certified, and be back before the hearing. Which was when the telegram came, and everything got worse. The hearing had been moved up 9 days, and the presiding judge was a man named Ambrose Vane. Orla put down her cup so hard it cracked. "Vane," she said. "Elias, Vane is Cecily's father." The kitchen went silent. "This was never about a missing page," Elias said at last, and his voice had gone flat with the effort of holding himself together. "This is Ambrose Vane finishing something he started 6 years ago." "He can't preside," Nell said. "There's a conflict. He's required to recuse himself. He's the only circuit judge covering 3 counties until spring. He'll say there's nobody else available." Elias's jaw tightened. And technically he won't be lying. Then he's using a shortage as cover to settle a private score. Nell heard her own voice come out hard and clear and did not recognize it. "That's not law. That's theft with a gavel. That is exactly what it is." "Then somebody rides to Laramie," she said. "I'll go," Elias said at once. "You can't." Wexler shook his head. "If you're gone 4 days, with the hearing this close, and something happens here, you're not here to answer it, and you're the most recognizable man in 3 counties. If Bly has eyes on you, and I'd wager he does, he'll know where you went, and why inside a day." "Then who?" Every eye in the room turned toward Nell before she had even finished forming the thought herself. "I'll go," she said. "Nell, no. I worked in a judge's office for 2 years. I know what an archived claim looks like, how to request one, what to ask a clerk without raising doubt." She lifted her chin. "You would be recognized within an hour. I would not. Nobody has ever once looked closely at me in my whole life, Elias. For once that's going to be worth something." He looked at her for a long moment, and something warred behind his eyes fear, and underneath the fear, something that looked very much like pride. "I'm sending Rye with you," he said. "That's not a request. That I'll agree to." They left before dawn, Rye riding point with a rifle across his saddle, and they rode hard, and Nell used the miles to steady the fear in her chest, a fear that had less to do with land agents than with the way Elias had looked at her on the porch before they left, like a man memorizing something he was afraid he might lose. They made cold camp the first night in a stand of pine with the horses picketed close, and Rye built a fire small enough to hide and sat across it from her cleaning his rifle because his hands wanted something to do. "He's sweet on you," the boy said around midnight. "Not that it's my business. You're right. It isn't. I've worked that valley 3 years." He went on anyway, the way young men do. "Never once seen him look at anybody the way he looks at you. Not even Miss Cecily, and everybody in 3 counties reckoned that was the great love of his life." Nell watched the fire. What happened to her? Her daddy shipped her east before Mr. Coulter could stop it. Some folks say she wrote him letters for a whole year, begging him to come and fetch her. Rye set down the rag. Her father burned every one before Mr. Coulter ever laid eyes on them. Nell's stomach turned over. That's cruel. Judge Vane's a cruel man where his pride's concerned. Rye shrugged. A boy repeating what men said in barns. Everybody knows it. He'd sooner burn a thing down than let it belong to somebody he never approved of. The words dropped into Nell like a stone into still water, rings spreading outward, touching every fear she had been keeping quiet since the telegram came. Because that was the shape of it, wasn't it? Not greed alone, not pride alone. A man who could not bear that a thing he had judged unworthy might be happy anyway. She had met that man before. She had met him in a green traveling coat on a walk in Granite Falls, telling her she took up space that decent families could use. Nell lay down with her head on her saddle and the sealed copy of a deed she had not yet obtained burning a hole in the near future. And she thought, I have spent my whole life folding myself smaller for people like that. And then she thought, with a clarity that surprised her into sitting halfway up in her blankets, and I am not going to do it anymore. Not for a banker's wife. Not for a judge. She slept 4 hours and woke before Rye did, and they rode into Laramie at noon. The Laramie land office was small, tucked between a saddlery and a bank, and the clerk was a tired old man who looked up with mild curiosity. I need an archived copy of a land claim. Nell's voice came out steady and business like the voice she had used for 2 years in a judge's office and had not forgotten how to wear. Section 14, Township 9, filed 1868 under the name Amos Coulter. You family? I'm assisting the family's attorney in preparing documentation. It's a routine request. He studied her a moment, shrugged, and went into the back. It took 20 minutes. When he came back, he set a thin yellowed folder on the counter with the careless confidence of a man handling something ordinary. Nell opened it with hands that wanted to shake and made them hold still. The seal was intact. The date matched. The description matched. And there was nothing at all before Amos Coulter's name on that section. There's no earlier filing, she breathed. There never was. Something wrong, miss? No. Nell closed the folder with great care. Everything is finally right. I need a sealed copy of this. Your seal and your signature. It's going to be presented in a courtroom in 9 days, and I need it beyond any question of doubt. They rode back through the night, trading watches so one could sleep in the saddle, the sealed copy wrapped in oilcloth inside Nell's coat like something worth dying to protect. They were 3 miles from the valley when a rider came out of the tree line. Rye had his rifle up before the horse had finished shying. But it was not Bly, and it was not one of Bly's men. It was a woman. Thin, well-dressed, pale beneath a traveling bonnet, standing beside a horse that had plainly been ridden hard all night. I'm not here to hurt anybody. Her voice shook. Please, I need to speak to whoever's carrying papers for Elias. Who are you? The woman's chin lifted, some old courage steadying her even as her hands trembled. My name is Cecily Vane, she said. I'm the judge's daughter. And I have something that could save Elias's valley, if you'll let me say it before my father knows I've gone. Elias came out onto the porch at the sound of hooves with his rifle already in hand and froze when he saw her face. Cecily, hello? Elias, her voice broke on his name. I know I've no right to come here. I know 6 years is a long time to vanish without a word. But I heard what my father is doing to you, and I couldn't stay silent. Not this time. He lowered the rifle slowly. His face was a battlefield. I wrote you letters, Cecily said. Every week for a year. Did you ever get one? Not one. His voice had gone rough. I thought you'd simply stopped. He burned them. The words seemed to cost her something enormous. I found them 2 months ago, going through his desk, a whole drawer of them, unopened, unsent, hidden away like they never existed. Nell watched Elias absorb this, watched 6 years of quiet grief rearrange itself into something closer to fury. Why come now? Because I was afraid. Cecily's eyes glistened. My father spent 6 years teaching me that defying him costs more than I could survive paying. But then I heard what he means to do to you. Forged claims. Threats. Her eyes flicked to Nell for the first time, and something like understanding passed between the 2 women. I couldn't let him do to your life what he already did to mine. She reached into her coat and drew out a small bundle of papers with hands that shook so badly she nearly dropped them. He hired Marcus Bly 8 months ago. Bly forged the older filing on a blank county form my father had access to through the courthouse. And he paid the county clerk Hollis to cut the original page from the ledger to make the forgery look convincing. She held out the papers. This is a letter in my father's own hand instructing Bly exactly how to do it, referencing the payments. I found it in the same drawer as my letters. Elias took the papers with hands gone unsteady and read them by the gray light of almost dawn, and his face went through disbelief, then fury, and then something almost like grief. "There's more," Cecily said quietly, and everyone went still. "It isn't only pride. A mining company out of Denver came to him 18 months ago about the mineral rights under your north pasture. He's had surveys done in secret. That ground isn't worth what you think it's worth, Elias. It's worth a fortune, and he meant to take it and sell the rights before anybody in this territory knew what he'd done." The porch was silent except for the first birds. "He was never punishing me for loving you," Elias said slowly, understanding breaking across his face. "He was using our history as an excuse to steal something worth more than either of us ever knew. I believe so. I'm sorry, Elias, for all of it." He looked at her a long moment, and Nell watched something settle in him. Not the old love rekindling she felt, a relief she was ashamed of, but something closer to forgiveness. The peace of a man who finally sees the true shape of a wound he carried for years. "Thank you for coming," he said. "For whatever it costs you." "It's already cost me everything," Cecily said. "He'll know I'm gone by midday. I don't intend to go back." Wexler read the letter twice, and his exhaustion cracked into hope. "This changes everything. A written instruction from Judge Vane's own hand detailing a forgery and naming payment to a county clerk. This isn't circumstantial anymore. This is a judge orchestrating fraud from his own bench." He was already writing. "We file for his removal before the hearing begins. Present this to the County Judicial Council. Emergency review of his fitness to preside." "How long?" "If we're fast, and if the council takes it seriously, which they will, seeing this we could have a different judge assigned inside the 9 days. Cecily, sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. "You should know that my father is not a patient man, and he does not lose gracefully. If he learns I've given you that letter before the council acts, he won't wait for a courtroom. He didn't. They were barely back at the valley when Rye came pounding up the porch steps. Riders, 4 of them. One's Bly, and I think the older one's the judge himself." Elias turned. "Nell, you and Cecily, upstairs, door locked." "No," her voice came out firmer than she expected, surprising even herself. "If he's coming here to frighten you into backing down before the council acts, and he finds you alone, it's your word against a judge's. If Cecily and I are standing beside you, he cannot lie about what was said here without 2 witnesses to contradict him." Elias searched her face, torn between the instinct to protect her and the plain knowledge that she was right. "Stay close to me," he said at last. "Both of you. If it turns dangerous, you get inside. No arguing." They came up the east road in a rise of dust, and Judge Vane dismounted slowly, a spare, cold old man who sat a horse with the rigid posture of someone accustomed to rooms falling silent when he entered them. His eyes found his daughter first. "Cecily, you'll come home with me." "Now, no, father." Her voice shook. She did not move from Elias's side. "I won't. You have no idea what you've done." Vane's eyes cut to the shape of the letter beneath Elias's coat, and for one instant something like genuine fear moved behind the fury. "Whatever you believe you've stolen from my desk, it changes nothing. I am still the presiding judge in this district." "We've filed for your removal," Elias said, stepping forward. "The council has your letter, in your own hand." Vane's calm cracked just slightly, just enough for everyone on that porch to see the fear underneath. "I have spent 30 years building a reputation in this territory," he said, "low and dangerous. I will not allow a runaway daughter and a laundry girl with no family name to destroy it over a strip of pasture." and Nell heard the words laundry girl land and waited for the old flinch the shrinking, the instinct to make herself smaller so the cruelty would have less to land on. It did not come. It was never about the land, she said, and her voice carried clean across that yard. It was about proving you could still own your daughter's life 6 years after you tore her away from the man she loved. And somewhere in the middle of it, greed found you a fortune under his grass, and you decided both prizes were worth the same forgery. Vane's eyes snapped to her, cold and assessing. And who exactly are you to speak to me? I'm the woman who rode to Laramie and back in one night to find the paper that proves you're a liar, Nell said. I'm the woman standing beside a man you've tried to destroy twice and failed both times. And she felt Elias's hand find hers, steady and certain. And she did not let go of it. Bly stepped forward, his practiced smile finally slipping. This is beneath you, Judge. We should discuss terms privately, as gentlemen. There will be no terms, Elias said. There will be a hearing with a different judge, and a letter that proves exactly what the both of you did. Vane's face went through fury, then calculation, then something that looked very much like defeat, though his voice stayed iron. You think this ends today? I have 30 years of favors owed to me in this territory. Friends on the council you've just petitioned. This isn't finished. Not by half. He mounted with sharp, furious movements and looked back one final time, not at Elias, but at his daughter, standing tall beside the man he had taken her from. You will regret this. Then they rode out, and the dust rose and settled, and the porch was very quiet. He's not finished, Cecily whispered. No, Elias agreed, his hand still holding Nell's. But neither are we. The threat should have afraid Nell into silence. Instead, it woke something steadier in her. He'll go after Hollis first, she said. If Hollis is the one who cut that page. Vane will either buy his silence or make sure he can't testify. A man who forges claims and burns his own daughter's letters isn't drawing many lines. Then we get to Hollis first. You can't. She caught his arm. If you ride into Cheyenne hunting a county clerk in the dark and something happens to him after you've been seen there, whose door does it land on? Wexler goes, as counsel of record, and I go with him. Absolutely not. That's probably wise, actually, said Wexler from the steps. Elias turned on him. Frightened men don't talk to more men, the lawyer said. But he might talk to a woman who already caught his lie and didn't shout about it. Hollis's house sat behind the courthouse, and it took nearly a full minute of knocking before the door cracked and revealed a face gone gray and hollow. Miss Whitaker, you shouldn't be here. I know you're afraid, Mr. Hollis. I'm not here to threaten you. I only want to understand. And his calm broke all at once. They said it was a small thing. Cut one page, they said. Nobody reads deed books that close. His voice cracked. $40, more than I make in 2 months. And I told myself it was harmless. He wiped his face. Then Bly came back last week and he wasn't offering money anymore. He said if I ever spoke a word, he'd see my family suffer for it. I have a wife, Miss Whitaker. 2 children. Nell sat down across from him and put her hands flat on his table. Mr. Hollis, I have spent 8 years believing I was nothing, because it was easier for people to tell me that than to look at me honestly. She held his eyes. You can be a man who took $40. Or you can be the man who told the truth when it cost him something. That choice is still in front of you tonight, and it will not be in front of you forever. Hollis Ward gave his statement to Thomas Wexler at his own kitchen table at 2 a.m, weeping, with his wife standing in the doorway holding a lamp. The council acted in 6 days. Judge Vane was removed from the case, suspended from the bench pending his own trial, and taken into custody in his own study on a Thursday afternoon. But a man like that does not stop simply because a door has closed on him. Bly was arrested 3 days later at the hotel in Cheyenne, and he pulled a pistol and put a ball through a deputy's shoulder before they got it away from him, and then evidence began to go missing from the marshal's office. The pistol. The witness statements. Somebody with money was buying the case apart, piece by piece, from a cell. It was Nell who caught it. "Who has a key to that evidence room?" she asked Marshal Kerr. "And which of them has lately had a debt paid he could not have paid himself?" The clerk was Garrett Voss. His sister's ranch outside Laramie had been 3 months from the bank, and was suddenly, somehow, clear. He lasted 10 minutes with the marshal before he broke, and named the guard who had been carrying messages in and out of Vane's cell for a fee. 2 more arrests. The pistol found under a floorboard, and Vane, stripped of every favor and every friend, put in solitary to wait for a trial he could no longer bend. Marcus Bly was convicted of fraud, forgery, and shooting a deputy. 8 years. Vane's trial was held in Cheyenne before a judge brought down from the north specifically for her total lack of connection to his 30 years of favors a spare. Unsmiling woman named Ardith Lowe, who read every page put in front of her and could not be got at. They called Nell to testify about the ledger. Vane's own lawyer, a smooth Denver man, tried the only door left open to him. "Miss Whitaker, what is your occupation?" "I keep house at the Coulter Valley. And before that, I washed linens at Hobbs's Laundry in Granite Falls." 8 years. A laundress. He let that sit for the room. "And you would have this court believe that you, with no legal training whatsoever, walked into a record office and identified a forgery that had been prepared by professional men?" "No, sir," Nell said. "I'd have this court believe I noticed a page had been cut out of a book." Somebody in the gallery laughed. The lawyer's smile thinned. "You expect us to accept that a woman in your position, Sir Nell, folded her hands in her lap and did not raise her voice? For 8 years I carried other people's linen through that town, and in all that time not one person in it ever once looked at me directly. Not the banker's wife. Not the man at the store. Not, I imagine, your client." She let it land. "That is the whole reason I was able to walk into a courthouse in Cheyenne, ask for a deed book, and read it at my leisure while a clerk fetched me tea. A woman nobody looks at can go anywhere she likes." The courtroom had gone very quiet. "Your client's entire scheme," Nell said, "depended on people like me being invisible. I would like the court to note that this is the one and only time in my life that being nothing has been worth anything at all, and that it was worth exactly as much as it cost him." Judge Ardith Lowe let the silence run for a full 3 seconds. "The witness may step down," she said. "The court thanks her. Vane was convicted of fraud, forgery, perjury, and abuse of the bench and given 15 years. Cecily did not attend the sentencing. She sat in the valley kitchen with a cup of tea she never touched, waiting for word. 15 years, Elias told her gently when they came home. She absorbed it slowly, her face unreadable. "I thought I'd feel relieved," she said at last. "Or triumphant, maybe. Instead, I just feel tired." "That's not strange," Nell said softly. "It's exhausting, carrying a fight that big for as long as you carried it. Relief doesn't always arrive the way we expect it to. What happens to me now? I've no father waiting, no family name that means anything anymore. I don't even know who I am outside of being his daughter. You're the woman who burned down a lie he'd been building for a decade," Elias said. "That's not nothing, Cecily. That's not close to nothing. You'll find your own road," Nell added. "It might take time. It took me 8 years to understand my own worth, and I only found it because a stranger knelt in the mud one morning and refused to walk past me." She reached across and took Cecily's hand. "Sometimes it only takes one person looking at you properly before you can look at yourself." He asked her on the porch, on a cold, clear evening at the end of it all, with the peaks going purple and the first stars coming out. He did not kneel. He simply took both her hands. I've spent 6 years believing the safest thing a man can do is want nothing, Elias said. And then a woman knelt in the mud in front of a town that had spent 8 years telling her she was worthless. And she kept her back straight while she did it, and I have not had 1 hour of peace since. His voice went rough. Marry me, Nell. Not because you need a roof. You'd have got one on your own. You're the most capable person I've ever known. Marry me because I love you, and because I've been building fences my whole life and I would very much like to stop. Nell stood on that porch and felt 8 years of a voice in her head. Women like you should be grateful for whatever kindness they receive go quiet, all at once, as though somebody had finally opened a window in a room that had been shut for a very long time. I spent my whole life believing kindness was something I had to earn, she said. And then you handed me back a thimble worth a nickel like it was worth more than everything in your pockets. It was, Elias said. It was worth more than everything in mine. Yes, she said. Yes, 1,000 times. Word of the engagement moved through the town faster than any of them expected. And it brought something Nell had not expected. The town's opinion of her, hardened over 8 years into something cruel and settled, began to move. Mrs. Petrie from the dry goods, who in 3 years had never given her more than a nod, stopped her on the street to ask whether she had chosen her wedding cloth. I've a lovely ivory come in from Denver. I thought of you the moment I unpacked it. Nell stood at a loss. She did not know what to do with kindness from a woman who had watched her carry laundry down that street for years and never once looked up. That's generous. Well, Mrs. Petrie colored. I suppose none of us see clearly what's in front of us, until something makes us look harder. It was not quite an apology, but it was the nearest thing to one this town could make. Dunmore was worse, because Dunmore tried. He came out of the store as she passed, turning his hands over each other, and said he hoped there were no hard feelings. That a man says things in the run of business. That he had always thought her a hard worker. Nell looked at him a while. 8 years ago, you told me women like me should be grateful for whatever kindness we receive, she said. I want you to know I believed you. For 8 years. And it cost me more than you will ever have the imagination to understand. Dunmore's mouth worked. Good afternoon, Nell said, and went on down the street, and did not feel cruel and did not feel triumphant. She felt, for the first time in her life, like a person who had somewhere else to be. Marjorie found her 3 days before the wedding, outside the church. I hear congratulations are in order. Her voice was pleasant in that particular way. It must feel like quite a triumph. The laundry girl marrying into the richest valley in the county. Rather like a fairy story, isn't it? Though I do wonder what happens to fairy story girls once the shine wears off. And Nell felt the old instinct rise the urge to shrink, to apologize, to make herself smaller so there was less of her to hit. She recognized it. She named it silently. And she let it pass straight through her without taking hold. Mrs. Fell, she said. I spent 8 years in this town believing every unkind thing you and people like you said about me. I believed I was nothing, that I deserved nothing. That kindness was something other people got to have, and I simply hadn't earned my share. Her voice did not shake. I don't believe that anymore, and I don't think I'll ever believe it again, no matter what you say to me on a church step. Marjorie's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't rescue me, Nell went on, steady now. The words coming easier than she expected. He simply saw something true about me that this whole town had trained itself not to look at. That isn't a fairy story, Mrs. Fell. That's only what happens when somebody finally bothers to pay attention. She walked past her without waiting for a reply, and though her heart was hammering, she did not look back to see the woman's face. For the first time in 8 years, it did not matter to her what that face was doing. They were married beneath the old pines beside the valley house in the first warm week of the year, with wildflowers gathered by Orla and Cecily, and half the county come out, and Thomas Wexler standing near the front with the particular pride of a man who had helped fight for every inch of the happiness unfolding in front of him. Elias's eyes, when she reached him, were wet, and he made no effort at all to hide it. "You look," he said, his voice wrecked, "like every good thing I never let myself believe I'd have." "So do you," Nell whispered, and meant it with her whole heart. The years after carried ordinary joys and ordinary troubles, the kind she had never dared imagine because nobody threatened to take them away. She opened a school inside the first year and taught the children of families as poor as she had been, and would not let one of them grow up believing what she had believed. Elias built the schoolhouse himself and would not take $1 for it. Cecily stayed a year, then went to Laramie and wrote every month about a life that was at last her own. Marjorie never became a friend. But she put her granddaughter in Nell's school that spring, and that wordless act said more than an apology could have. And on a morning 10 years on, a girl of about 9 came into that schoolroom in a dress that had been mended more times than it had been washed, and would not look anybody in the eye, and sat at the back with her hands hidden in her lap because they were cracked and raw from work. Nell knew that girl. She had been that girl. At the end of the lesson, she crouched down beside her and took a small, dull silver thing out of her own pocket, and turned the child's hand palm up and set it in it, and folded her fingers closed over it exactly as a stranger in a fur coat had once done for her in the freezing mud outside a store. "This was my mother's," Nell said. "It's worth about a nickel. I've carried it through 8 years of being told I was nothing, and I never once sold it, not even when I was hungry." The girl stared down at the thimble in her fist. "Why are you giving it to me?" "Because I want you to understand something. And I want you to have a thing to hold while you learn it." Nell looked her in the eye. Small doesn't mean worthless. Poor doesn't mean worthless. Nobody in this town, or any town, has ever been given the right to decide what you're worth. She closed the small hand more firmly around it. "That's yours now. Both of them. The thimble and the truth." The girl's chin trembled. She did not cry, because girls like that do not cry in front of people, and Nell knew it, and did not make her. That evening she sat with her husband on the porch where so much of it had happened, and watched the sun go down gold behind the peaks, and Elias took her hand the way he had 1,000 times. "Do you ever think of that morning?" he asked. "Every year, on the day it happened." She leaned against his shoulder. "I think about how close I came to believing her, how many more years I might have spent believing her if you hadn't knelt down in the mud." "I didn't give you your worth, Nell," Elias said, and his voice was steady, and it was certain. "I only saw it. It was there the whole time. It was only ever waiting for somebody to look." She had knelt in the mud, believing herself forgotten. She had become a wife, and a mother, and a teacher, and a woman this whole town turned toward instead of away from. And on a porch under a sky that had watched every storm they had weathered together, Nell Coulter understood with a certainty nothing on this earth would ever shake loose again, that she had never once in her life been nothing. She had only ever been waiting to be seen.